Hello everyone, I'm John Evans. Welcome to another episode of One on One. REO Speedwagon will perform live at the North Carolina Azalea Festival Friday, April the 8th at Live Oak Bank Pavilion. The band has sold more than 40 million records since its debut in 1971. 6 top 40 albums, 2 number 1 singles, 12 top 10 singles on Billboard, and this man, Kevin Cronin, has been the front man for that band for 45 straight years. Kevin Cronin, what a pleasure it is to welcome you to the One on One with John Evans podcast.
Well, nice to be here, John. Thanks for having me, and it's good to be here in North Carolina. I love North Carolina, man. Ooh, love it.
What can fans expect when the Speedwagon rolls into Wilmington on April the 8th?
Well, I'll tell you what, we are re-energized, I can tell you that. After spending the better part of 2 years off the road, we were loading into a show in Minneapolis on Friday, March 13th, 2020, when the plug got pulled on everybody, and Friday the 13th indeed. So we spent, like I say, almost 2 years off the road. So since we've been back, you really, what they always say, you don't know what you got till it's gone. And so we're just, we came back with a vengeance, man. We dug into the catalog, worked up some songs that we hadn't played in a while that are fan favorites. Naturally, we've got the 10 or 12 songs that, as you mentioned earlier, that were just hits, and our fans want to hear us play them, and so we're going to give them all the hits. But we like to also. We have what we call audibles, which depending on where we are, how we're feeling, I can kind of call, I'm kind of like the quarterback out there. I'll call an audible and we'll throw in a song at the last minute or throw in an acoustic song. So there's always some surprises, but we're just glad to be back, and we've just noticed that people they're just starving for live music. There's just nothing like a live concert. You can't reproduce it anyway. So we're psyched, man. We're ready to go.
Do you still get as energized now on stage as you did back in the early 70s when you guys were really starting to try to make a name for yourselves?
Yeah, it's something that when you first start out, you're working toward getting to the point where it starts out, you have one song that people recognize, and every night you just look forward to playing that one song. For us, it was Riding the Storm Out, and little by little over the years, you get a couple more songs that people recognize, a couple more songs that get played on the radio, until you've got a whole show that you can play that people can pretty much sing along to every song in the set. Well, that's every songwriter's, every artist's dream. And so I don't take that for granted for 1 second, John. I mean, I still feel, when I'm standing in the wings and the house lights go down and the walk-on music starts, I get that rush of adrenaline. I get, little butterflies. I'm as psyched to do it now as I ever have been, and in some ways even more so because of having it taken away for that time during COVID. So, one of the beautiful things about what I do, and one of the things I'm most grateful for, is that I'm still doing the same thing now as I was when I was 12 years old. So every time I walk out on stage with a guitar, there's like a direct connection to that 12-year-old kid who was saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show and was trying to learn how to play the guitar and trying to form those chords, and my fingertips were aching. I used to practice till they just about bled, and so that part of me, it's still there. I look in the mirror and I go, well, I guess I'm not 20 anymore, but I still feel like I am.
Is that when the earliest times you remember picking up a guitar and wanting to be, I'm going to borrow one of your songs, wanting to be a music man for the rest of your life?
I had been taking guitar lessons for a couple of years, and I didn't really know why. I was playing songs like, On Top of Old Smoky and Down in the Valley, and little, practice books. And then one day, my parents had the Ed Sullivan Show on, and the Beatles came on and played "I Want to Hold Your Hand," and it was like it was just everything changed for me. And back in those days, before the Beatles came out, it was not cool to be a musician or to be a guitar player, kind of like it is today. So I'd be walking down the street. I used to have to walk about 3/4 of a mile to get to my guitar lesson. And I'd be walking down the street with my guitar, little 11-year-old kid, and, a carload of, we used to call them greasers. They would see a kid with a guitar, and I was different, so that made me a target, so they'd, pile out of the car, and I'd have to throw my guitar over a fence, jump over a fence to avoid getting my ass kicked, right? Well, then the Beatles came out, and the week after that Ed Sullivan Show appearance, those same guys who wanted to kick my ass last week, this week, all they wanted to do was get in a band with me, because I was the only one in the neighborhood who knew how to play guitar. And the Beatles kind of came on TV and virtually stole everybody's girlfriend in America. I mean, all of a sudden, that's what girls wanted. They wanted guys with guitars. And so I went from being the neighborhood, dork
Target, yeah.
to the coolest guy in town overnight. I didn't know what hit me.
Were born in a suburb of Chicago and then joined a band of people from the same area. How did you hook up with REO Speedwagon anyway? Because they had started, I guess, 3 or 4 years earlier, correct?
Yeah, they had. And as a matter of fact, it's a kind of a long story. I'll plug my book for a second here. I am almost finished with a 5-year writing project that I started in December of 2016. Turns out books are a lot longer than songs, just if anyone was wondering. But I tell the story. It was really it kind of came out of desperation. But it just kind of goes to show that if you want something bad enough, you find a way to get there, and I was in college, and it was 1970, 1971, and college campuses were just out of control because of the Vietnam War, and there were protests everywhere, and everybody was stoned all the time, and it was nuts, and I just didn't find anything in college at that time that was interesting enough to keep me there. And so I, through a number of happy accidents, I got the attention of Gary Richrath, and he was the original guitar player in REO, and they were getting ready to make their second album. And as they always say, you got your whole life to write your first album, and you got a year to write your second album. And I think Gary realized that he needed some reinforcements in the songwriting department. And when he and I met, I played him a song that I had just written called Music Man, and he dug it. And one thing led to another. Like I say, it's a long story, kind of funny, but I ended up getting the gig. And it's so my life has been all about being in and out of REO Speedwagon since literally about 50 years ago right now.
I was going to say, it's 50 years this year. I've been a fan for 44 of them, but you were in and then you left and then came back. Did you realize, I mean, some people get second chances in life, Kevin. Some get third chances. When you went back, did you look at that as a second chance? And did, I guess, obviously things worked out.
Yeah, I did. I looked at it as a second chance for sure. It was, and you know the split needed to happen. And again, you know, the story is that there's a lot to the story, but just to you know, there was when I joined the band, I was the new guy, right? So in '72, but I was also the lead singer. So we'd be playing a show, and I'd be singing. And Rich Rath, God love him, he was an amazing showman. If you were, I mean,
Yes.
if you saw the band back in those days, Gary was just, he was a monster. He was incredible, and honestly, I feel. Really underappreciated, underrated. You know, I think he belongs in the conversation of the greatest rock guitar players of all time, and he's never even mentioned for, you know, I don't know why.
And people that don't know should just listen to the Flying Tuna Trot. That will give them an idea of how good he was.
Oh yeah, and watch the video, because it's not just what he made his guitar sound like. It's the way he presented it. He just literally became one with his guitar, and he was so physical. He made love to those Les Pauls. He danced with them, you know, and like you say, for that song, he would stand out on stage in a full arena, 20,000 people. The rest of us would leave the stage, and he would stand out there for about, you know, 10 to 15 minutes just with an electric guitar, no microphone. He wasn't a singer. He just played guitar, and the place went crazy.
Yeah.
And it was, like I say, it was what he played, it was how he played it, it was how he approached it. He just, just amazing. And so we, I think, you know, both of us were really driven, and that, I think that was part of what drew us to one another. There was always a level of competition between us, friendly competition, but it made both of us better, and but then it got to a point where the competition became unhealthy, you know, and so I think we needed to get away from each other for a while, and then I tried to make it as a solo artist. They tried to make it without me, and neither worked. So when we got back together, there was a little bit more of a mutual respect, and you know, when you realize that you need somebody, it helps you to get past the rough patches. And so for those next 12 years, between, you know, 77 and 89, we it was a pretty interesting ride. We saw the world and had a lot of fun.
Well, I became a fan late one night, laying in bed. I happened to turn the little black and white TV in my parents' house when I was 15, turned it, and used to be, for those who don't know pre-MTV days, there used to be a show that came on late Saturday night after Saturday Night Live called Don Kirshner's Rock Concert.
Yes.
REO Speedwagon was on Don Kirshner's Rock Concert in 1977, played Keep Pushin', Like You Do, Riding the Storm Out, Golden Country, and the next time we drove 40 minutes to Allentown Mall, I picked up You Get What You Play For, the live record, and boom, I was hooked, and I may have been the only REO Speedwagon fan in my town of 2,500 people, but I have been on that Speedwagon bandwagon ever since.
Ah, that's so great. That warms my heart, you know, because we all have that experience. We all have that album that you pick up, and it's just, and you're there, and you've somehow, something in that music, you see your own reflection in it, and there's a connection there that happens, and just, you know, and as an artist, as a writer, as a band member, you know, people connecting to our music the way you did, just on a very just gut visceral level, that just makes me, that brings me joy. But yeah, John Kirshner's Rock Concert, man, it was pre-MTV, but it was also, the thing about Kirshner was you played live. You know, you saw a band on Don Kirshner, they weren't lip syncing. You
Right.
really saw what that band would be like if you saw them, if you went and saw their show. So it was a really a great thing for bands like us who, we were from the Midwest, so we didn't, we weren't on the cover of Rolling Stone. We weren't getting reviews in the New York Times. We were just, slugging it out in the clubs of the Midwest. And when we got to play on Kirshner, that brought us into the homes of like yours, of
Yeah.
people, toward the East Coast, people toward the West Coast, and it really helped us because, like you say, people saw us play and they were like, "Oh, who are these guys? I've never heard of them before." So
Yeah, I can remember. And then the Tuna Fish album came out, which I had my 6 copies, 8 tracks. Oh, I wore out so much of those things. But the thing that I remember is when Tuna Fish came out, obviously I got it, and Roll With the Changes is still the song. If it's 75 degrees, I want the sunroof open, both windows down on the interstate. That's the song I put on. But I can remember when I had the 8-track in my Camaro, and people would say,
nice.
who's REO Speedwagon? And I'm like, wait a second, hold on a minute. Just listen to this. And then 9 Lives came out with Only the Strong Survive, which is another one of those songs that I can't hear enough of. And, those were the ones that you were still my little secret at that point in time. And I'm like, I love these guys. I hope they make it, but they're kind of mine. And then High Infidelity came out and just blew the roof off everything and made you guys a household name.
It did. It's funny that you say that because, in some ways, High Infidelity was a double-edged sword because it did make us famous, or we all of a sudden we're touring the world and we're selling out Madison Square Garden, playing the Superdome and the Astrodome, but there were a lot of people kind of in your position who, it's nice to have a band that's kind of your little secret. Like I felt that way about the Police when I first heard them. Was in, I think, like '79. They were on some little like cable show in Germany when we were touring over there, and I saw this band. I saw them play Roxanne, and I was like, who is this? And I remember coming home and telling people, you got to check out this band, The Police. And everybody's like, who's The Police? What kind of a name is that?
Yeah.
And but I fell in love with that music, and I'm still a huge Police fan and a huge Sting fan. But then the band blows up and everybody knows about them, and then suddenly it's not your little secret anymore. You know?
And one of the things that I noticed early on was on the Tuna record and then on 9 Lives, you guys started producing your own stuff. And how big was that? As big a challenge, or was that almost something that you were glad for because nobody else could tell you what you could do? You were in charge pretty much all the way around.
Yeah, we actually had a number of really talented, producers with big time track records. Bill Szymczyk, Bill Halverson, who produced Crosby, Stills and Nash, my favorite band of all time. But no one really was able to capture whatever it is that makes REO Speedwagon unique. It just never came across on the record. When we played live, everyone got it and heard it, but somehow it didn't translate into the studio. So when Gary and I realized that we had written some pretty strong songs, for the album, which would become You Can Tune a Piano, But You Can't Tune a Fish, and I just wasn't about to let some outside producer kind of spoil it, and so we went to New York City and we went and met the president of the record label, and we were like, we're going to produce this record ourselves, or we're not going to record. Here we come. Hot off the gold album of the live. You get what you play for. And oddly enough, the record company president was like, "Okay." We're like, "What?" We thought this was going to be like a huge fight, but it turned out that we that all they asked is that we have a guy named John Boylan, who had just gotten done producing that first Boston album, and it was a big success. And John was a staff A&R guy at our label, one of the greatest people ever. Again, I sing his praises in my book. He's just incredible. And so he was kind of there in the studio with us, just as a safety net. But no, we were hell bent on producing that record ourselves, and it was quite again too long of a story for us now. But the book kind of chronicles the whole thing, and it was. I just feel so grateful and so fortunate that the people that I have come in contact with along the journey, such as John Boylan, such as there have just been so many great people that have helped facilitate my music, and because I get all the credit. But there's so many people that it takes to make a hit record or to have a 50-year career as a band. There's not too many bands that can say that, and there's the list is long, and I'm just very, very grateful for all the people that have supported me through the years.
I know what you're talking about because, to put a good newscast on the air like I've been doing now for almost 40 years, it takes good producers, it takes good directors, it takes good audio people. And if all of those people don't work in concert, then, it can go south in a hurry. And while my face may be the one on the air, like yours up on stage, without everybody else, it wouldn't be nearly as good.
You bet, and that is not lost on me for a second. I mean, we've had the same road crew pretty much. Every once in a while, someone has to leave the road for one reason or another. But most of our guys have been with us for 10 plus years, some for 20 plus years, and when we find good people, we like to keep them in the family. When our crew is so overqualified. We've got guys that are just brilliant geniuses at what they do, and they make, they just, like you say, they make us, our lighting director makes us look great. Our sound man makes us sound the best that we can possibly be. So we're, like you say, it takes a lot of people to make it happen. And you and I are the people that everyone that sees, but there's a lot of people that make us look good.
A lot of people may have heard some of the stories you've told about the High Infidelity record, Neil waking up in the middle of the night and pressing record on the Little Rascals for Tough Guys and everything else like that. But, after High Infidelity, you had a number 7 record with Good Trouble, a number 7 record with Wheels Are Turning, a top 30 record with Life as We Know It. Did you feel pressure after High Infidelity, Kevin, when you went back in to produce the next one and the next one after that? Because let's face it, that bar went up here after that record, and I can only imagine what the pressure was like to try to follow it up.
Yeah, it it was pretty intense. I will tell you. It's you work your whole life to get to that point, and in my case, I thought that getting to that point was going to just all of a sudden everything in life was going to become just easy, and all my problems would be magically solved, and it as it turns out, it's like you say, it's awesome. I wouldn't trade that success for anything in the world, but a lot of times that success, it can ruin you if you're not careful, so I think one of the beauties of being in a band is that you've got the band to, because everyone outside the band, you're different to everyone because you go from being kind of unknown to suddenly being known. But inside the band, everyone's just, you're the same guy that you were before High Infidelity, after High Infidelity. So it's nice because we were able to keep each other honest in that way. But the pressure was big, and I I personally wanted to wait after High Infidelity. My position was, hey guys, we're in a position right now where the next thing we do is going to be welcomed by the fans, by radio, so it's like, so let's take our time and make sure that the next thing we do is really great, because we have this unbelievable opportunity. So that was kind of one train of thought. Then there was a train of thought was like, hey man, we're hot. Let's strike again, before this thing cools off. And I did not take that position, but I was kind of outvoted, like like 50-1.
Oh,
And,
really?
yeah. And so the follow-up album, Good Trouble, was a tough one for me. But then we kind of came back with Can't Fight This Feeling,
Right.
and that was to me that was the really important moment, because having that second #1 single just was, it's like anyone that thought REO Speedwagon was a one-hit wonder, well, guess what? We weren't.
No, they are not one-hit wonders. 50-plus years and going strong for REO Speedwagon. A big thank you to Kevin Cronin for taking time from the tour schedule and joining us for this week's podcast. There are some tickets still available for REO's show Friday, April the 8th at Live Oak Bank Pavilion in downtown Wilmington. It's all part of the North Carolina Azalea Festival. Go to ncazaleafest.org for ticket information, and you can follow Kevin and the band, REOSpeedwagon.com. Now, before we go, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please subscribe to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast on whatever app you use to listen to your favorite shows. And if you would be so kind, please leave us a rating or a review. We'd love to hear what you think of our interviews, and the more feedback we get from friends like you, the higher we'll be listed on the apps, the better chance we'll have of bringing in even more new listeners. I'm John Evans. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of One-on-One.